You woke up one day to find the lines you drew in your life had been completely erased. Why does the manipulation feel gradual, not sudden? This is the dark psychological paradox of boundary conditioning, a tactic that weaponizes consistency against your standards.
See, this isn't about some big, obvious attack on your values. It's a slow, methodical grind. And that's the paradox, isn't it? The manipulator takes something we usually see as a good thing, consistency, and they turn it into a weapon to destabilize your life. They're basically training you one tiny step at a time to accept less, to expect less. It's so quiet, it happens below your conscious radar, and it leaves you questioning your own reality. By the end of this, you're going to understand exactly how they do it, and more importantly, how to stop them. All right, let's dive in right where the confusion starts, which ironically feels like the end. You know that feeling? You look back and you just can't figure out when your standards started to slip, or why you're just so tired all the time. Think of this as a psychological crime scene. The evidence isn't a smoking gun. It's that nagging feeling of unease, those boundaries that have just vanished, and the way you're starting to doubt your own judgment. So our job here is to dust for prints, to figure out the invisible method they use to pull this off.
Okay, so here's the official term for it. Boundary conditioning. And let's be super clear. This is not an accident. It's not a bunch of misunderstandings. It is systematic. It's a calculated, long-game tactic, a real cornerstone of coercive control you see with certain personality types. The key word you need to lock onto here is gradualism. The whole strategy is designed to fly under your radar, to bypass your natural defenses. Why? Because our brains are wired to adapt to slow, tiny changes, not react to sudden shocks. It's all designed to be invisible while it's happening.
And this right here, this lays out the core strategy perfectly. Just think about it for a second. If someone came at you and tried to just bulldoze one of your major boundaries, well, your internal alarms would go absolutely haywire. You fight back, you'd resist. That's what your defenses are for. But this is way more insidious. It's that 1 inch at a time method. It doesn't set off that fight or flight alarm. Instead, it triggers something much more dangerous: adaptation. It makes you burn through your mental energy on these tiny, repeated violations until you're just completely worn out. So what's the end game in all this? It's really cold and tactical. It's all about one thing: compliance maximization. The manipulator wants to get the most control, the most out of you, with the least amount of effort possible. By slowly grinding you down, they're literally training you to comply. They're trying to get you to a point where fighting for your own boundaries feels way more exhausting than just giving in. That fatigue, that's their weapon. And your quiet compliance, that's the prize.
Okay, so we've defined the tactic, we know what the goal is. Now it's time to look under the hood. We're gonna break down the engine that actually drives this whole process of erosion. Let's get into the nitty-gritty and analyze the evidence step by step. We're about to reveal the 3-stage mechanism that makes this slow training method so incredibly destructive.
So here it is, the pattern of erosion. And what you gotta understand is that this isn't a straight line. It's a cycle, a really vicious feedback loop that's designed to chip away at your standards over time. It starts with a little test, then it pushes you into exhaustion, and it ends by setting a new, lower bar. And guess what? That new low bar becomes the starting point for the next round. So let's break down each stage of this machine.
All right, stage 1, trial and pushing. This is the opening gambit. The manipulator starts with a violation that's intentionally small, really low risk. Like, let's say your boundary is, call me if you're running late. So they show up 10 minutes late, no call. See, it's just big enough for you to notice, but it's small enough that if you make a big deal about it, you feel like you're overreacting. And that creates this mental static. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance. It's where your belief, my time should be respected, clashes with what you're doing. Well, I'm not going to start a fight over just 10 minutes.
And that leads us right into the most critical phase: adaptation and fatigue. That little violation, it wasn't a one-off. It gets repeated, consistently. That 10-minute lateness is now the norm. So now, every single time, you're faced with a choice. Do I really want to have the same argument again? This constant conflict is just draining. You get psychologically worn down. And just to get some peace, to get rid of that constant low-level anxiety, you lower the boundary. You decide, okay, I guess 15 minutes is fine. You're not adapting because you're weak. You're adapting because your brain is desperately trying to find a way to escape that chronic stress. And this is where it gets really dangerous. Stage 3, normalization and reset. That new lower boundary you just set, that 15-minute grace period, That's the new baseline. It's the new normal. And to quiet that mental static from before, you start to justify it to yourself. You start saying things like, oh, it's not a big deal, or, you know what, I'm just being more flexible. And that little bit of self-persuasion is absolutely critical for them because it locks in the feedback loop. You've just handed them a brand new lower starting line to begin the whole cycle all over again. The erosion is now set to continue. So, we've covered the what and the how. We've mapped out that whole three-stage mechanism. But to really get this, and more importantly, to defend against it, we have to look at the psychology. Why does this tactic work so damn well on the human brain? What's really driving the manipulator, and what makes the target vulnerable?
This chart really lays bare the toxic dynamic at the heart of all this. Look at the manipulator's side. Their motivation is simple: low effort control. They want to be in charge without having to fight for it all the time. This slow burn method is just efficient for them. Maximum gain by using your fatigue against you. Now look at the other side, the target's vulnerability. And I want to be clear, this is not a character flaw. It's rooted in two totally human, totally predictable responses: habituation and our deep need for anxiety reduction. Let's dig into both of those.
Okay, first, habituation. This is just a basic feature of our brains. We are wired to tune out stuff that's constant and seems non-threatening. You know, like the hum of your fridge or the way your watch feels on your wrist. After a while, you just don't even notice it. A manipulator weaponizes this exact process. By making their little boundary tests constant and low grade, they turn the violations into background noise. Your brain starts to file this behavior under normal and stops seeing it as a threat. And that's what makes it so hard to spot while it's actually happening. This second piece of the puzzle is the trap of anxiety reduction. Look, the target learns really fast that trying to enforce their boundary is going to lead to a predictable negative reaction. Maybe it's a guilt trip, maybe it's an angry outburst, or maybe it's that awful silent treatment. So you start to feel anxious before it even happens. Your brain does this quick subconscious math and trades a long-term standard for some short-term peace. Just giving in right now feels so much easier than gearing up for the fight you know is coming. It's a totally logical choice in the moment, but it's a devastating trade-off in the long run. All right, we've gone through the crime scene, we've dissected the method, we get the psychology, now we pivot. We move from analysis to empowerment, because knowing how this works is only half the battle, right? The other half is actually building your defenses. So how do you fight something this subtle, something designed to operate below your radar? We're about to lay out a clear, actionable security plan to shut this manipulation down. So here's the strategy. It's not actually that complicated, but it does take discipline and consistency. It boils down to 3 core tactics. First, you have to know exactly where your line is, and you have to make it concrete. Second, you have to completely change how you respond to violations, especially the small ones. And third, you have to shift the burden of fixing things back onto the person who broke them in the first place. Okay, step 1, document your line. See, this kind of manipulation absolutely thrives in ambiguity. The manipulator wants your standards to be fuzzy and subjective, something they can argue about. Your defense, make them crystal clear and objective. Don't just keep them in your head. That's where they get twisted. Write them down. Get them out of your head and onto paper. Create a non-negotiable rule, like, I require 24 hours notice for any change of plans. This statement becomes your anchor. So when a violation happens, you're not trying to remember a feeling, you're looking at a hard, concrete standard. It cuts right through all that emotional fog. Next up, the direct counterattack to that gradualism we talked about, a zero tolerance policy. And this is so crucial. You have to stop doing that mental math about whether a violation is big enough to be worth a fight. That's exactly what the manipulator is counting on. With this policy, you treat every small violation with the seriousness of a big one, because now you know the small violation is the greatest threat. You enforce the consequence immediately, consistently, every single time. This completely short-circuits their whole game. And finally, step 3. This one puts the responsibility to fix things right back where it belongs, on the violator. The rule is no apology, no compliance. This means that after they cross a line, things don't just snap back to normal. You require a real apology, and even more important, you require corrective action. They don't get to just say sorry and then do the same thing tomorrow, and you refuse to fall for that intermittent reward tactic, where they suddenly get nice again just to smooth things over. Nope, not until the original standard is respected. This forces them to be accountable, and it breaks that endless cycle. So, we've looked at the evidence, we've taken apart the mechanism, and we've laid out a defense. Now let's bring it all home. Let's summarize the case and deliver the final verdict.
The one core idea that will help you protect not just one little line, but the entire wall.
Look, if you only remember one single thing from all of this, let it be this. The greatest danger isn't the size of that first little violation. The danger is the precedent it sets. That smallest breach is a Trojan horse. It's a test designed to set a new, lower baseline so they can launch the next attack. Protecting your standards means you have to protect them at their weakest, most seemingly insignificant point.
So, how do you finally break that loop? It all starts with awareness. First, you have to see it for what it is. Boundary conditioning is the slow training method, and it's designed specifically to erode your limits. Then, you have to know the pattern. You see the trial and pushing for what it is, a test that exploits your natural fatigue and habituation until that lower standard becomes normalized. And that's how you break the loop, by documenting your original line and applying a strict zero-tolerance policy for even the smallest violations. You send a clear, powerful message. My standards are non-negotiable.
So we'll leave you with this. Understanding the method is step one. Applying it is everything. This isn't just some abstract theory. It's a practical tool for protecting yourself. So now that you know how it's done, the real question is, which line, that tiny, seemingly insignificant one, are you going to refuse to let them move?